Let me just start off by saying that action figures are getting so expensive right now that you're probably going to have to sell your cheeks just to buy the new Maximum Spider-Man action figure. And look, I should clarify before we get into today's video that I was actually kind of a defendant for this particular action figure. Obviously, this was way before we knew what this particular collectible was going to go for. So we were just going off of rumors, and I personally predicted that, or I shouldn't say predicted, I assumed that the figure was going to go for anywhere between the lines of like $40 to $45, and it ended up being a grand total of $50. And look, I'm not going to get too deep into this particular figure and all of the intricacies that come along with it, because I already did that in my original video where I talked about this figure and the entire wave that was announced at that live stream. So if you guys want like that original raw take, you guys can definitely check that out. I'll throw a thumbnail up and maybe post a link in the description if you guys want to check that out. But overall, a quick little 2-minute recap. It's a phenomenal release. It's one of the most innovative and creative action figures that we've seen from Hasbro in like over a decade. And honestly, it does compare to a lot of the import style action figures. I know people hate when I say things like that, but in terms of articulation, it actually trumps some of the articulated imported action figures. I think honestly, it's not even close. The ab articulation, the butterfly joints are crazy. That new neck joint that they're supposed to be adding, which crazy is a lot of people just assume off the bat that the figure has a lot of features that other figures have already had. Like people claim that it's, toe articulation. We've seen that before. Butterfly joints. We've seen that before. But I should reiterate and clarify, and I think I did this in the previous video like 30 times, but people just completely miss the mark on that. It's not just that they're offering butterfly joints and toe articulation and, the double ab section and all that articulation. That's not the main issue here. The thing is that this is all brand new sculpt. Yes, they have utilized toe articulation before, but not this particular toe articulation. Same thing with the butterfly joints and the double ab mid section as well. That has been utilized before. I think the neck joint is probably the only new thing, but everything else, yes, those features have been present before in Spider-Man Marvel Legends, but just not to this extent. Like this particular version, or the way that these butterfly joints are engineered, or the way that the toe articulates, that's completely new, and it's only for this figure. Like they went back, they re-engineered a body mold just for this release. They're going to include a ton of different hands, webbing accessories, a brand new head sculpt, and by the way, the accessories are also 100% exclusive to this figure. Like, again, they went back, they sat down, they created brand new molds, and some of the webbing accessories that actually can be ported onto the hands are only going to be utilized with those hands, which makes me believe that even if we might see those hands and those accessories way later down the line, I just don't think that they'll be as intricate as they were originally. Like I said, everything is innovative and creative at the moment of the release, but then eventually we might get to see them reissued. But the thing is, not to this degree, not with this many accessories, with the little effect stand, with the great articulation that comes with the figure. Having said all of that, yes, $50 I think is overpriced. By how much? I guess you can sit down and do the math yourself. It's a matter of personal perspective. In my opinion, I would have been comfortable paying around that $40 to $45 price point, just because, as I said, it trumps, in terms of articulation, it actually trumps a lot of imported action figures. I don't need anybody to sit there and tell me what figures or how amazing import figures are when I've owned them myself personally, and a lot of these articulate, semi decently, but compared to Marvel Legends, sometimes they're on the same level in terms of the ab crunch or butterfly joint articulation or toe articulation, simple things like that. So I don't feel like they're necessarily that far apart. So for Hasbro to offer an action figure for $50, I don't think is out of the realm of possibility. And I don't think that it's like destroying, it's like massively overpriced. I personally don't think that $50 is overpriced, but I think if you're surprised by that, you probably haven't been buying Hasbro collectibles in years. Like the Giant Man, for example, I think was marked up by, maybe $20 to $30. All of the HasLab projects usually have like an extra $20 to $30 added to them. If you're buying some of these like comic book accurate, low level Marvel Legends that don't have extra accessories or extra head sculpts, and you're paying $25, guess what? You're probably overpaying for that particular figure alone if it doesn't have a build-a-figure piece. you're probably overpaying about like $4 to $5. So you're consistently doing this if you're purchasing Hasbro figures. I don't understand what the big issue is. The most comical thing about all of this is all of these people that were up in arms claiming that this was a ridiculous price, that nobody was going to purchase these, that they were going to sit on store shelves and just collect dust, that they were going to find them on the clearance aisles or in the clearance sections or at their local Ross for like $10 a pop. Guess what? They've sold out. I recently just checked Amazon, completely sold out. Hasbro Pulse is completely sold out, as well as Big Bad Toy Store, Entertainment Earth, and a few other retailers. I think there are some of these like really weird, obscure websites that have them. Personally, I don't trust any of these websites, so I wouldn't be purchasing anything through them. I think the only website that might still have them available at the moment of this recording is GameStop, and that might actually be one of the stores that I think may receive some of these even in store in the foreseeable future. But it's just laughable that even now I go like on social media or even I go on YouTube and there's like a million different videos and a ton of comments and a ton of different articles about how this figure is like ridiculously overpriced and nobody should buy it and nobody is picking it up, and how much of a joke the price point is. And yet the figure's selling out everywhere. There's either a lot of hypocrisy going on, or there just were a bunch of different people trying to flip this action figure for a profit, which is kind of hilarious to me. I can't even sit here and try to fathom how much you could potentially make off this figure. We've said before and try to do the math in a number of different videos on this channel where I kind of like try to dissect and do the math and break down how like eBay works, because a lot of people don't seem to know how eBay truly works. Like, for example, there are people right now posting this figure for $80. I don't understand how people are assuming that there's a ton of profit to be made. Like, people are sitting there going, yep, they're making about $30 a figure. It doesn't work like that. Okay, if anybody's selling this particular figure for $80 on eBay, guess what? That person is probably an insider. They probably are like a retailer themselves. They have some sort of connection, or they just buy in bulk from Hasbro, which, by the way, I've often questioned how it is that Hasbro allows for things to happen like this. I think there's like some there are some websites, I think like Entertainment Earth and Big Bad Toy Store, that if you have, or if you are technically a retailer or a store, you can purchase it in bulk and get like a massive discount. Because as I said, at $50, I was trying to do the math. At $50, let's assume you got free shipping, you're still paying about like $56 to $57. Let's just assume it's closer to $60. Now you still have to pay for shipping, which is another, let's say you're shipping it through eBay, another like $7 minimum. And then eBay fees, you're probably making like $2 to $3 off that figure if you bought it at full retail. So it just doesn't fit in my tiny little reptilian dinosaur brain that there are people out there buying them for 50 and then reselling them for 80. That's not happening, ladies and gentlemen. At the end of the day, the people that are selling them for $80 right now probably are like an eBay store. They probably have like all of their paperwork in order with like the IRS and everything, and they can buy in bulk. So they're probably paying about like $30 to $35 for that figure. And yes, there is some profit to be made if they're turning around and flipping it for $80. I honestly feel like the hypocrisy is running rampant here, because as I said, there are a bunch of people claiming that they weren't going to buy the figure, that they were going to allow it to sit there, that they were going to try to quote unquote send a message to Hasbro by not purchasing it, as if one or two or three different collectors doing this, or even 100 collectors doing this, would ever affect Hasbro. I mean, for this to, like actually make them change their mind, there would have had to have been like maybe thousands of collectors that joined in on this cause and tried not to purchase it. But people are weak and they saw an opportunity here to try to flip the figure, or genuinely there was just that much demand for a high quality Marvel Legends Spider-Man action figure. I don't think it's the end of the world. I don't think it's that out of the realm of possibility that there were that many people that just wanted like an end-all Spider-Man action figure. And I genuinely feel like this is what it is. This is the best Spider-Man Marvel Legends action figure that Hasbro has ever done, and I don't think there's really an argument about that. Now, what's really interesting in this situation kind of reminds me of another line that I was a huge fan of. Unfortunately, we haven't heard anything officially from Hasbro on whether it's canceled or not. but the NBA starting lineup 6-inch line that they released, what was it, like 3 years ago, that particular line started out very similarly. They had like they were still doing the whole windowless packaging nonsense, and people were really up in arms about that. But essentially what happened here was they tried that $50 price point on the NBA starting lineup. Unfortunately, it didn't have the following, just because, let's be brutally honest, how many people are actually collecting action figures and are sports fans? It's probably a very, very tiny, small fan base, and there just wasn't that following for it. And they actually tried that $50 price point on that Hasbro starting lineup wave, and it actually ended up dropping. They actually ended up dropping the price point to $35 within like a month or two. I think it had a lot to do with their sales, but also it had to do with their profit margins. Could you imagine a original retailer releasing something and then within like 2 to 3 months, not only doing bad by the original consumers that bought the figure at $50, but the fact that they still try to kind of turn around and still like mark the figure down to $35 and still make a profit? Can you imagine how much money they were making at the $50 price point? Hasbro, I think, is really showing their true colors here. It's really frustrating. As I said, do I think that Spider-Man action figure is like massively overpriced? I don't think so. I think it is overpriced by like maybe $10 to $5. But I still think there's some value there. It's not like the most ridiculous markup of all time. I think I saw some Facebook posts where some people were comparing it to like the Black Widow action figure. I think it was like a Target exclusive deluxe. And that's a completely different conversation, just because that figure, I don't know how old it is at this point. I'm going to assume it's probably like at least 4 to 5 years old. It's a completely different time frame. There's like this huge markup in just in general for like goods, not just for action figures. Like you can go and see it by buying a dozen eggs, right? Like there are people now for Valentine's Day giving their loved ones like a dozen eggs because they're like massively expensive. And the list goes on and on. I mean, gas prices spiked or have been spiking here and there for like the last few years. But you look at things like shoes, articles of clothing, things of that nature, like everything has gone up with inflation. And so for people to assume that like they would only mark up a Spider-Man deluxe action figure by like, let's say $5 to the $35 price point, when they actually gave you a Black Widow deluxe figure for $30, and there was really nothing that innovative with that figure aside from it got like a ton of new weaponry. They had like some blast effects that you can port onto the action figure stand, which was pretty cool. But the figure itself had like no real upgrades. It was that ugly like old female body with the single jointed elbows, no butterfly joints and things of that nature. So I don't understand how you can even compare the two. Let's say it's a $20 markup. They're just not the same. You know what I mean? Like there was some reuse with that figure, and I believe those blast effects were later used for like some Iron Man action figures. But and I can kind of see where the argument is, just because of the stand and the effect pieces for the blast effect pieces. But it's just not the same in terms of the engineer work that went into the Spider-Man action figure, like the new neck joint and then everything being new from head to toe, the new accessories, the webbing accessories and things of that nature. Like, I don't think they necessarily compare. It's like apples and oranges. And also you have to account for inflation. I mean, back then Marvel Legends were still going for, if I'm not mistaken, the $19.99 price point. Now that we're at the closer to like $25 to $27 price point, depending on the figure. Look, at the end of the day, I can't tell anybody how to feel about a figure, or I can't really tell people how to like do math or how to calculate plastic ratios and inflation over the past few years. We can't do that. I think everybody is going to look at the figure, the collectible, the accessories, and then actually do the math themselves. Are their pockets deep enough? If they are, then they will probably pick up this collectible. I just honestly wanted to sit here and ramble and just call out the hypocrisy in the community, because there is no way that everybody that claimed they weren't going to buy this figure did not buy it. Because if that was the case, this figure would still be sitting on, digital store shelves and everything would still be in stock. But the fact that this sold out that quickly at that particular price point, I think is just laughable. There are a ton of people out there that either lied to their own community about not picking up this particular figure, or They literally just bought multiples to try to flip them at a later date, which, look, at the end of the day, everybody can choose what it is that they want to do. If they're not limiting how many you can purchase, you can buy as many as you want. You know, nobody's really going to tell you what to do with your money. I just honestly find this entire conversation very, very fascinating, because if you ask this humble reptilian, I would have done the same thing that they did with the starting lineup wave. Just hold out, don't purchase it, leave it at that $50 price point, and then I think Hasbro would have reacted and probably dropped the price a little bit here and there. But the fact that they were able to sell this figure out during the pre-order phase, I don't know, that just gives them a green light to continue to do things like this. I mean, I just personally floated around the maximum edition, like Hulk, for example, which would be a deluxe maximum figure. Could you imagine? We just paid $50, or people just paid $50 for their Spider-Man. Could you imagine how much you would have to pay for a deluxe Hulk? I mean, what, like bare minimum around like $75 to $80? It's baffling to me how some of these prices are rising. But at the end of the day, guys, and by the way, before I end today's video, just a quick little heads up. Jada Toys, and I probably won't make a separate video for this, but Jada Toys just decided to drop their Blanca and Sagat deluxe action figures, which are much bigger, bulkier, taller, for $30. Just to put things into perspective, I know they don't come with like a ton of accessories and things of that nature, but they're still deluxe size action figures for $30 with great articulation and, you know, pinless tech and everything. I just think it's really fascinating and intriguing to see things go down the way that they are. But as always, let me know your thoughts down below. Did you guys buy this figure? Do you plan on buying it? What's your overall take? What's your feeling on this? I think people are either very strongly opposed or very strongly for this figure, or there are a ton of people just not even saying anything and secretly buying a ton of these. Just very interesting. As always, if you guys enjoy this type of content, make sure to stay tuned. We did open up the membership for the channel, so thank you to those of you guys that already joined up. And if you guys want to support the channel further, you know, just kind of help upgrade the setup and the equipment and everything, and just help me free up some time for the channel, you guys can, you know, join up. And there are some little, you know, perks, like, you know, shout outs to those people that have joined the memberships, exclusive live streams, videos, and then potentially, or I think I already have opened it up to where you guys can maybe watch some of the videos like a few hours early. So just some minor little perks if you guys can. If not, just watching, hitting the like button, leaving a comment, all that kind of stuff just really helps out the channel in the long run. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, make sure to enjoy the hobby. I know, like, it seems half of the time on the channel I'm just complaining and ranting on about stuff, but it's just stuff that I'm very passionate about. I love action figures, I love collecting, and sometimes I just kind of let that, you know, take over. So make sure to enjoy the hobby, pose your action figures, enjoy them, photograph them, whatever it is that you enjoy doing. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.